All right, another amazing guest. I've got to stop saying that because all our guests are amazing, but today is really special. Chad Helminak, he's the Director of Education and Training Programs for the National Credit Union Foundation, and we uh, we do a lot of work with credit union people. They're some of my favorite people to work with, and for all the reasons we're going to talk about today, Chad's going to talk a lot about the power of empathy in leadership, particularly credit union leadership, and we're going to touch a lot on how credit unions are responding, how they're helping people, their customers, their communities during the COVID-19. We can still call it a crisis. I don't know. I think we're getting past that. Let's call it a challenge from now on. As always, if you're listening live here on Facebook or on YouTube, please make sure you join the conversation. We're going to be watching the comment threads. Post your comments, your ideas, your suggestions, your questions, and we'll do our best to respond to as many of those as possible. And if you're watching on replay, still post your comments, all right? Because we'll make sure that we either respond or today we'll get them to Chad if that's appropriate as well. Okay, so without further ado, let's bring on Chad Helminak. Chad, it's great to meet you. Like we were just talking, I'm surprised we haven't met face to face. Maybe we have. I don't know. I've had a lot of concussions, so it's probably my fault if I don't remember.
Yeah, ship's passing somewhere, I'm sure, but it's good to finally connect with you over live stream. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, I appreciate it. Hey, why don't we start off? Tell me your favorite stories. I mean, there's so many that we've been watching, and thankfully we're hearing some good news, right? The way the credit unions have been so responsive, and ours certainly has. And in fact, you know what? If I remember right, we had a comment that came in earlier. And Miranda, thank you so much for your encouragement. You've been showing up on all these live streams, and it's really nice to see you. She says it, right? I love my credit union. They've been angels on my team. Wow.
I love seeing that. And it's, I've worked for credit unions for nearly 15 years, worked inside a credit union one for a while too. The first thing on their minds when all this was going down and as it's continued is how can we help people? There's a business to take care of, and there's employees to take care of course, but how can we be there for our members? And it's been incredible to see that play out and see the patterns that emerge, but also the uniqueness in how they help members.
One of the key strategies we're always working on here at Essentially Leader Movement is this idea of tough yet compassionate, right? Yeah. Because I'm with you. We're singing in harmony. To us, the greatest component of compassion, the most important one from a leadership perspective, is that idea of empathy, to really understand what people are going through, right? But on the other hand, tough means, wow, there are some serious decisions that need to be made, especially with small businesses. We begin a lot of questions from small businesses that are trying to process these loans. How are the credit unions responding to that? I think they're going a little quicker than most of the banks, but I'm a little biased. So are you, right?
Well, there's something to be said about, a lot of credit unions are of small and medium asset size, and their ability to be mobile. And that's been one of the most inspiring things. And it gets into the operations and things they're doing. But a lot of credit unions weren't set up to be in a virtual space and serve members like that, and to see how they've been able to adapt and evolve and act quickly to member needs. So I think there's something to be said about the size of the organization. That's not to say the larger ones haven't reacted in the ways they have either, but there's something to be said about, turning a cruise ship versus a small sailboat.
Yeah. And make sure you talk a little bit about, NCUF and how you support credit unions and, really what your role is, because you're right. The smaller operations generally will be a little bit more responsive. And of course, the people that are there, right? But on the other hand, one of the challenges that we've heard from credit union leaders over the last few years is this idea of merging, right? A lot of credit unions have been merging and becoming bigger, but they don't want to lose that personal touch and that very interpersonal culture, huh?
Yeah. And I'm happy to share more about the work we do at the foundation, and then jump into kind of that merging topic. We're the charitable arm of the credit union movement here in America. So we're an affiliate of the Credit Union National Association. And what we do is a few things. We call ourselves a catalyst for credit unions. It's how we help them live their mission. So helping their members to improve their financial health is one of our areas. And the area that I work in is around how do we live our philosophy and values to serve people in the ways that other financials either can't or won't.
Right. Yeah, because it's nice to talk the talk, but if you don't walk the walk, it's right.
Yeah, living our values, and especially during this time, right? You see these examples that playing out in the marketplace beyond the financial marketplace, of course, and you're like, really, is that, does that follow those words you have on the wall in your boardrooms and in your offices?
Yeah.
So, but the topic of merging is tough. Part of our programming, we do a lot of leadership training around living our values and how we adapt to member needs. So this is an extraordinary time to talk about that. But some of the innovations we see in some of the small credit unions, because they are plugged into, they're so close to the members they serve, they're able to practice empathy, whether they're consciously doing it or not. They are so in tune with the needs of their members that they're able to just sometimes pivot in the moment to solve for those needs. So that means something to people, and that breeds loyalty. And that's why, we do see those mergers over time, but at the same time, we're shouting to the rooftops that there's value in having small financial institutions and ones that are focused in community, and we have to do everything we can to make sure they stick around.
We're probably singing in harmony on this because, as you were talking, a couple of things came to mind. First of all, that idea, living your values. We actually put up a poster it's kind of a joke, but it really isn't funny. We created one of those posters, one of those motivational posters, mountaintop, the guy standing on a mountaintop, leadership, and then underneath it says, this poster won't do a damn thing to help you be a better leader, right? And you're right, too many times, and, we've all been to these things, weekend seminar to create this beautiful, cultural focus or a vision statement, a mission statement, how you could, right? But if you're not living it, if you're not walking the walk is the term we keep using, then it's absolutely useless. That idea of living your values, as an organization gets bigger, they don't need to lose that. And it's also leadership at the front lines, right? It's those people right on the front lines, the tellers that are interacting with the public. If they're demonstrating good leadership, if they're demonstrating these values, man, that's right. It doesn't have to go top down, I guess is the point, right?
You're absolutely right. And I think in those large organizations and the small ones, the branch staff, when I worked at a credit union, one of my favorite things to do was when I'd visit our branches and meet with the employees who work there, I'd say, what's the best story of member service you can tell me from the past month or so? And we would get the most incredible examples of practicing empathy and doing good business, right? That's creating loyalty, that's serving people, that's everything we want to do on the check boxes. But the crazy thing also in my time in credit unions is that we're terrible promoters for the most part. The branch employees, for example, the branch employees would say, well, yeah, that's just what I do every day. So unless we ask that question and start that conversation, it doesn't come up because they're just so immersed in all that action. It's heartwarming, but also like, we got to shout that more because that's incredible stuff.
It's ironic, the people that care the most are often the people they don't want to toot their own horn, which is fine. One of our other strategies is be confident yet humble, right?
Well, you probably see parallels in I know you work with a lot of small businesses too, and other businesses as well, but you probably see parallels there across the board, right?
Well, yeah, and it's funny because in my own experience, coming from a life, 30 years in the martial arts business, it was the same thing. I mean, we were so immersed in trying to, help people grow, help people reach their best potential that it was very difficult for us to go out and say, hey, come see us, we're the best. It's just, it goes against the grain. It goes against that humility gene, right? But you're right, it is important. It doesn't have to be obnoxious. I mean, it just has to be that your marketing departments have to make sure that they're telling the good stories, right?
You're absolutely right. And asking that simple question of what have you done lately that's just warmed your heart and that's following our values. And that's a powerful thing. The other thing too, that you touched on is watching the idea of leadership and living our values starting from the top down. I think one of the things that's been a really interesting part of our work over the past year is it's a really simple idea. You've seen value assessments, but taking that all kinds of stuff out there, but taking that idea and saying, how do your values align with the values of the organization? Because how does that, you can say you're living, with transparency or honesty or, whatever the value is, but how does that trajectory change when you consider what your values are? And how do you mend that if there is a gap? What's the alignment there?
Hey, we really appreciate all the people coming on, and we appreciate your thumbs and your likes. Those are all, it makes us feel good. But also make sure you join the conversation. If you've got an idea, if you've got a story, if you've got a story about how, you've expressed compassion and empathy in your organization and your leadership in your life, please share it with us. If you've got questions for Chad, chime in. No, I agree with you 100% on that. And the idea that it's simple, one of the things that we've noticed, and believe me, I understand the pressure, but a lot of leaders in credit unions and other organizations, they're looking for that grand gesture, looking for that big speech, that inspirational thing. And to me, inspiration, the most effective inspiration is very commonplace. It's small. It's paying attention to somebody. It's reaching out and asking, how can I help? Right. And it's the same thing, like you said, living these values. These are small steps. These are little things we do every day that really add up to something meaningful. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also paying attention to, we've also done a lot of work and looking into the idea of habits and our environment, right? How do we? That's one of the big things, and I'd echo your question to the listeners right now: is how can organizations, what kinds of structures and processes can be put in place to either encourage or even incentivize empathy, and which ones don't help empathy grow? Because we've got, we're putting together examples in the credit union space, but the learning goes well beyond that. So kind of thinking of how do you, I can be as empathetic as I want, but if my job and my role and responsibilities don't encourage that, then how do I live that, right?
No, absolutely. In fact, one of the best stories I ever heard, just a couple of years ago, and I share the story quite a bit. One of the credit unions right here where we live in Maine, in fact, it was funny because I was away when I heard about this, when I read about this, but we were talking about, it was in a workshop, we were talking about how do you express compassion effectively, and like you said, make it a process, make it a habit. We call it a discipline, right? Embed it in your life. Well, these guys, and they're consistently voted one of the best places to work in Maine. Nobody likes to go out and scrape their windshields on a cold, Maine day when it's storming and icy. So what the executives did is they go out and clean the windshields for the employees, for the whole staff when there's a storm, right? And it sounds like such a small thing, but wow, is that powerful? I mean, this is something people talk. One of our friends, Dennis Snow, actually, he's the author of Lessons from the Mouse. Tremendous speaker, tremendous trainer, all kinds of stuff with leadership and customer service and sales and whatnot. And he's saying, showing appreciation to your employees is always important, even more so right now. And Dennis, please make sure you put your contact information in the comments too, so people can see you.
Yeah, and Dennis's comment leads to something you've said, and I've heard this on your show previously, that things that are simple aren't always easy. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, simple, not easy. You learn that lesson as you're becoming a black belt.
and what Dennis is bringing up, this idea of showing appreciation is so. It's so, sometimes it's overlooked, right? We're so busy with, I've talked to credit unions who are busy, so busy finding the shields for the branches and the masks and the anti-bac and all that, all the logistical things we have to take care of, at the same time, turning around and saying, thank you, I see what you're doing. That means the world to people, right? So that's such a great example he's sharing.
It goes two ways too. One of the things we've been talking about, again, leadership has nothing to do with rank, title, or position of authority or anything. So, one way that people can show leadership to one another is, be patient with the folks that are behind the scenes. They're dealing with the supply chain and things are clogged up right now. When you drive up to that credit union window or bank branch or anything, but we're not gonna talk about banks today. But these guys have been in there and they've been working hard and they're working long hours and they're dealing with a lot of different process changes. So as customers, we can show leadership by just being patient when we go up to that window, right? And not jumping all over somebody because things are a little slow. They're going to be a little slow for a little while.
Yeah. And to the credit of banks too, there's so many fantastic, especially community banks. You see them doing great work out there too. So it's, we're all trying to figure this out together. There's a lot of, but I see we've got a question from Jeffrey here.
Go ahead. You take this one. Can you break down the difference between compassion and sympathy? I'd love to hear your take on that.
Sure. And I was just going to say, I'd love to hear yours too. So I can go first, I guess.
Go ahead.
Sympathy is looking at, this is the order of them. Sympathy is looking at somebody's situation and saying, well, that sucks for them, and sometimes sympathy is associated with a level of judgment or inaction, I'd say, is the underlying thing there. And empathy too, to an extent, empathy is putting yourself in the shoes. We hear this all the time, putting yourself in the shoes of others and thinking about what they're seeing, what they're feeling, what they're hearing and doing,
Right.
and trying to make sense of their actions, trying to truly understand how they're living their life, how they're making decisions. Empathy isn't the end game though either. We like to say empathy is a doorway, right? And it's not our destination. Compassion is the destination. Compassion is putting empathy into action, and that's where, you know, we've talked about empathy a lot. And Jim, I got to be honest, I don't know if I heard you mention compassion earlier. I'm hesitant to use the word sometimes because I think when business people hear that, they're out, because compassion, I think, is associated with altruism or some level of charity, right?
Sometimes even weakness. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But it's actually it's completely the opposite, and
Exactly.
it's the output of empathy. What would you add to that as well?
I think we're singing in perfect harmony. You know, you're exactly right. Compassion, sympathy literally means, and Jeffrey, thank you so much for always being a great supporter of the program. And Jeff and I, we go way back in the martial arts too. I've known him for quite a long time. Oh yes, Alex, thank you very much. You reminded me that in the credit unions, we're talking about members, not customers. Thank you for that. That's empathy right there. Yeah. No, sympathy literally means, the definition of it is to share in somebody's suffering, right? That's it. So, you know, whether that's acknowledging, it's that point. Empathy is another step. It's to really consciously develop an understanding, right? Like you just said, walk in their shoes. Both are expressions of compassion. And you're right. And that's one of the things, and one of the reasons we purposely picked that word and we use it in workshops is because it does start an argument sometimes, right? And in the act of clarifying and defining these terms, we come to a greater understanding. And compassion is anything but weakness. I agree with you 100%. You must be strong to express compassion. It's easy to lash out at people. I mean, that's part of what's wired into us as human beings at times. When someone pushes, we're wired to push back. And again, that's one of the great gifts of living a life in the martial arts, that we learn those things. People are always asking us, what's this idea? You're learning how to fight, but you're talking about being peaceful. Well, it's learning how to resist that initial urge to constantly strike back or push back. You see what I mean? And that's one of the great themes that we explore in martial arts. And you reminded me of another thing. Perfection's not a destination. It's a never-ending process, right? So again, we're singing in harmony. We've got to embed these things as disciplines, as habits in our life. And it's simple, not easy.
I had a friend share an article recently from Harvard Business Review on empathy during crisis. Actually, if you spend too much time there, creating a level of inaction, you're spinning your wheels. And when businesses have to make those really tough decisions, especially right now, we're hearing more of unemployment, furloughs, and decisions that businesses and leaders don't want to make. At the same time, acting in compassion, and that key word of acting, right? Making those tough calls is a really interesting concept. And I'd love to, I don't know if you've had conversations recently about that. As businesses, we all are making tough choices personally and as organizations, and to carry that out with compassion. I think there's, all kinds of communication lessons we can translate to that too, with transparency, honesty, being straightforward with folks, however you want to put it. But there's something to be said about that.
No, you opened a couple of cans of worms there. First of all, that's why and I've been challenged on this. People sometimes say, well, Jim, you're always talking about compassion. Why isn't it compassionate yet tough? And I said, well, I purposely put tough first. And here's why. Because sometimes you have to make decisions that don't look kind. They don't look they're not going to be well received on the surface, but they may be necessary. Now, first of all, and I know Dennis was on our stream a couple of weeks ago, and we both talked about this. A few people have. If, for instance, you're facing the possibility of layoffs, we've been saying, call us first. There's some other alternatives that we can go through. But you may have to come to that decision, and it may look cruel, particularly the people who are being laid off or furloughed. But that may be the greatest act of compassion, because that may be a necessary step to preserve the organization and to keep other people working, right? Another example that comes up quite often is if you're putting up with a bad actor in the workplace, someone who's committing harassment or something like that. They may be a top performer. They may be a producer. They may be friends with top leadership. And it may look cruel not to give somebody another chance, but you may be more cruel, less compassionate to the other people who have to put up with that stuff, and the other people who are affected by that bad behavior. So that's why it's tough, right? Yet compassionate. The communications thing. Oh man, we could, yeah, go there. You have an idea on that?
Well, just quickly, I think sometimes with those decisions we make, and especially when we look at them from an HR legal perspective, we feel like less is better. And there's some truth to that, right? But at the same time, making sure those decisions, because to your point, and the decisions small businesses are making, those leaders, I'm guessing 99 out of 100 times are making those decisions to think about those jobs will be there when things, when we're able to open up again. Right. We're going to make sure those jobs are there for our people by making this move now. And the ability to put that into words and say we're living our values versus, I've seen in the headlines recently, Disney's decision to furlough 100,000 of their workers while paying out executive bonuses over $1 billion. That's not normal in a business. I hope not what I'm seeing, especially from small business owners who are sleepless nights. They don't like doing this stuff, but they realize for the long run, that's where they got to go. Right.
Yeah. And, that's it for, a leader who is compassionate. I mean, I can remember the first time I had to do it. One of the worst things you can do, even when people deserve it, is when you have to fire somebody.
Yeah.
And when somebody cares, even though that's exactly the right move and they've asked for it, it's still a difficult thing to do when you're a caring person. So that segues nicely into that idea of communications you talked about. And, I don't like to stray too much into the political areas, but sure. I've noticed, and this is a clinical observation, though, it's not a partisan I don't have a dog in the hunt there. But one of the great mistakes that political leaders have been making that we can learn from is that lack of communication. I mean, so many people are upset and they're angry because there's these programs in place, but nobody knows how to operate them. There are promises of funds available, particularly for businesses now, but nobody really knows until recently, right, how this breaks down. And when you call, for instance, a lot of people have been expressing concern about the checks, the stimulus checks. Yet the IRS puts up, don't call us. you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's these things, and we do as leaders, I think, to help through a crisis, to be most effective through a crisis like this, as transparent as we possibly can be. If there's problems, let's talk about it. If we're somewhere stuck in the process, then give a status report. People are understanding if they know where you are, but when you just continually say, look, and especially if you have, I love the words you used, if we haven't earned the respect, the trust, the loyalty of the people that we serve, then coming out there and saying, we've got it under control doesn't mean a damn thing. Right?
and the compassion and strength you can show in saying, I don't know, right, but here's what we're doing to make sure we do know, right? Here's what we're doing, right. and not making this this grand gesture of, I've got all the answers. I think you see that too much, right? Or if I don't have the answers, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut because, I don't. That's sometimes interpreted as weakness, right? I don't know is okay. Well, we're just a rudderless ship at sea, right? But that's not always the case. You can use that message to show vulnerability and build that respect and loyalty.
Right, and the research is bomb-proof on that. Showing some vulnerability. Nobody wants to see a leader come out and just burst into tears. I should say rarely. I mean, sometimes that can be used to your advantage. Be judicious with that one. But most of the time, people want to see you confident and strong. But the vulnerability is one of the key areas that you need to build trust. You have to show yourself as a human being. If you're concerned, then say so, right? If you're worried, express that. But you can express that from a position of strength and confidence. And I think one of the best ways to do it is to come out and say, look, all hands on deck. Here's the situation we're facing, right? In a clinical way. Here's the obstacles in front of us. Share your ideas with us, right? All levels, because sometimes the greatest ideas come from the front lines. That's where most of your intellectual, experiential, and cultural capital lives.
And I love what you just said about sharing that, not overly sharing that emotion. I think you're right. Like if it was daily updates.
Right? We all have those moments where you try to keep them behind.
it's showing that we're not robots, right? One of the best, I just saw an example of this yesterday. I don't know the name of the governor from Nevada, but he was talking about, this discussion that's taking place about reopening Las Vegas, this conversation about reopening everywhere. Right. But he was talking about his conversation with casino union workers. Right. And he choked up a little bit as he talked about how 11 of them, I think, had died recently, and he doesn't want 11 more. And that point of, that realness that came from him in that moment of emotion just showed me that he cares. And that's huge right now too.
Oh,
you know.
couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
Couldn't agree more. And that's a lot that's just being human. That's a lot different than coming out and just melting down and freaking out, and not that we don't do that. That's what the curtains are for. Dennis has another interesting. Thank you, Dennis. Treating employees as people is the key. Amen. I hate it when leaders use the word headcount. They're people. I always hated the term human resources. Why don't you just say our people?
Yeah, in credit unions, it's this old slogan. We still use it today, but it's you're a name, not a number when you bank at a credit union.
Right.
And,
right.
Yeah, there's something to be said about treating people, and that's a whole other topic of kind of this member service right now, and kind of what we're seeing in credit unions. But there's it's there. Just to throw this out there, recently I had some conversations with financial counselors in credit unions, and how different that looks right now. So we've got kind of the formal financial advisory services that a lot of credit unions, banks, independent, you get that. The long term, there's been counseling for the short term, and now kind of this financial crisis counseling of how do it's not how do I build an emergency savings account? It's how do I make sure I come out on the end of this in with the least dings in the car, right?
Yeah. Oh, Alex just put up another one. Yeah, or human capital. Yeah, that's the worst one of all, right? Objectivizing. Professional speaker. You know what I'm trying to say. Anyway,
you're showing your humor.
I'm showing my concussions. The idea of empathy is so important when you're dealing with folks in that kind of situation you just described too, because one of the backlashes that's happening now, it's happening in two areas. It's happening, first of all, with these celebrity posts where, somebody's sitting by this beautiful pool with their outdoor kitchen and they're drinking wine and they're saying, "Don't worry, we're all in this together." No, I should be there. I'd feel a little better about it. But also, like you said, people who are employed, people who have the jobs, right? And they're sitting there and helping people process these loans where, especially a lot of the small businesses we've heard from, I mean, they're on the edge of disaster, and these loans are not materializing the way they were promised. They're enough to kind of keep the wheels maybe going, right? And people are worried. So I think it's very important, right? That's a great opportunity to demonstrate empathy and leadership. You remember, you have a job, it's a blessing. You're dealing with someone who may be facing really, really, severe hardships. No,
this is and it's been a really, right now is an extraordinary time to, I think we need to practice empathy out of necessity. But even before this, looking at whether it's a person or a business in a situation, and looking at, assessing the current state, assigning blame. We see that on the counseling side. It's your fault. You're in this position, and so good luck with that, right? That can translate to a number of situations. But I think when you start assigning blame, when you start making assumptions, that comes with it too. You close the door on opportunity, and to build that trust and relationship with your member or customer.
Oh no, and I'm so glad you brought that up. We actually did a video about that. No blame, and it was in response to a little something different, but it fits perfectly with what you're saying, because we've heard some of that, and there are, for instance, businesses. We just met somebody who just opened a restaurant. Talk about great timing, right? 2 weeks before the coronavirus thing emerged, they opened a new restaurant, and they pushed all their chips in. And maybe people would say you should have been capitalized for 3 months, for 6 months, whatever the advice is usually. But when you're an entrepreneur, you're taking all this advice and you're doing the best you can. You're taking your best shot, and sometimes it is the best thing to push all your chips in. It's risky, but it's the way it is. And like you said, it's very important people don't turn around and judge. Here's a question. Alex brought one in from a text, I guess. How are credit unions positioned to serve folks that are not members yet? That's interesting. I know many people want to go to them because they're not getting help from the bigger banks. Okay.
I would say credit unions are, we've over the years continued to add members. Now is an extraordinary time because I think we're looking at serving existing members, but we haven't shut the door on bringing new ones in. So I think the best thing is there's websites that you can go to, and I'm going to actually, Jim, can I add to the chat then myself, or we can add a link?
I think you can.
Yeah.
So if you say it, I'll type it. How about that?
Yeah. So let me just, I didn't have this prepared. So, but there's websites that you can go out to that help find a credit union that you can belong to. One of the misperceptions with credit unions is that you can't, you have to be a union member, or, you have to be a certain part business or a church or something like that. So let's see, there is, if you Google find a credit union, let's see, Jim, I'm sorry about this.
No, you go ahead.
Live stream etiquette. I'm showing my human now too.
This is the great thing about live streaming is we can do these things. So you go ahead and type that.
mycreditunion.gov is a place that you can go.
I'm not seeing you pop up. Well, I'll do that on a banner here. No
Sure.
worries.
Yeah, there's a credit union.
One word, mycreditunion.gov.
Yeah.
Shouldn't make this joke, but this is one of the government websites that actually works. There you go. It's not like the IRS. I mean, a lot of people have been expressing this one, right? They told you to go online to, what is it, get paid now or something, and then you get the banner that says we can't validate your credentials or something crazy.
Here, I'm gonna add one more too. That's actually a little bit more helpful. I'm gonna. Where do I go? I go to the live comments. Oh boy. All right. I'm just gonna. Can I send you the link, Jim? And
which one is it? Go ahead. Just tell me what you got.
Yourmoneyfurther.com is
What's that now?
Yourmoneyfurther.com.
Let's see if I can spell yourmoneyfurther.com.
Yeah, and I could go into some of the nuances about credit unions, the difference there and things like that. That's the one. Yep. Thank you so much for putting that up. That's going to provide some information on how to find a credit union, but then also some of the benefits there. So to Alex's question, the one she posted, check it out. Talk to a local one. We consider them our first responders in the financial industry, right? Credit union and bank employees out there serving people still. So they're still open, still ready to have that conversation.
Yeah, there you go. I'm so glad you brought that up too, because some people still do think there's so many ways that credit unions are set up now. Sometimes it's by the area that you live in, right? Sometimes the community, sometimes it's the industry that you work in. But there are a lot. I don't know anybody that can't find a credit union that they can't join.
You're right. Yeah. And so as credit unions have expanded to community charters, so a lot of credit unions started, we bring credit unions together for our trainings, and we ask, how did you start? A lot of them, the back of a business in a cigar box, that was their original, safe, in the back of a school, basement of a church, things like that. But over time, as they've grown, expanded to communities in different counties. Yeah. So everyone in America has access to join a credit union.
Yeah, all over the world. It's funny because we did a credit union event. It was in Cuba. It was for the Caribbean Confederation of Credit Unions, and really fascinating people. And geez, Alex, if you remember, I always forget his name. We met a gentleman there who started a credit union of about 4 or 5 people, right, down in the Caribbean, so in Trinidad, I think. And he's a great guy. He's been in the credit unions for more than 60 years. Isn't that amazing? I told everybody at the conference, I said, I changed my open for the closing keynote. I said, have you met this guy? You've got to meet him. That's it. Don't listen to me. You got to go meet this guy. But credit unions, it's really cool. I mean, so many events that we've done where, we're meeting people who operate very, very small boutique credit unions. I think the smallest one we met was in Vermont. It serviced one school district and it had 11 members. Wow. And then, of course, we meet some that have, literally thousands, tens of thousands. Yes, William Guadaloupe. Thank you. And if you're in the credit union world, please look this guy up. He is, even if you're not in the credit union world, this guy's an amazing leader. We were blessed to spend some time with him and just learned an awful lot from him. Please share your comments. We still have a couple minutes if you'd like to ask Chad anything or share your comments or ideas. And I'm remiss if I don't say this one. We'd love to have you as part of the Sensei Leader Movement. We're a global movement to network and support and develop human-centric leaders all over the world, okay? Very easy. Our first level is free, always will be. You just go to slmjoinfree.com, and I think you're going to get a bunch of free ebooks when you do that too, okay? So there you go. Yeah, have you run into William Guadaloupe?
I don't think I've had the pleasure.
You would remember.
Yeah, I have had the pleasure of meeting, we talk about the credit union idea, and I could go into the history and all that. I will spare you from that. But you see how this credit union idea started in Europe and spread to Africa, for example, and how they've taken this credit union idea and adapted it to the needs and the culture of their community, it's so inspiring. And there's so many, I think, what's cool about credit unions is there's so many unsung heroes behind the scene, like William Guadaloupe, who have dedicated life and service, to serving others. It's really cool.
Yeah, George Mboto, is it, in Africa? Yeah, he's amazing. We're going to be doing some more work with him. But this is a good question. Alex is posting: how is NCUF developing new leaders through the CE program?
So we've got what we call it a Credit Union Development Educator Program, or DE program. What the goal of the program is, it's existed for about 40 years. It's to understand and help leaders and credit unions understand that the issues that face members go far beyond their checking and savings accounts and the account balances we see. We talk about development issues, and this is a global, development education is a global thing that everyone from the United Nations to other, organizations work in. But what we try to talk about is hunger and health. We talk about the environment. We talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, all these things that sometimes seem out of bounds for financial institutions. But at the same time, there's this cycle of and how things cascade and impact each other that we really have to pay attention to. And then,
is that different than the DE program, or is it because she put it in that too?
Oh no, it's the DE program.
It is it's the same program. Okay.
Yeah.
So I hope we didn't confuse the credit union folks.
We love our acronyms in credit unions. I'm sure we're doing that with all the acronyms we throw around. But the other part of it is understanding our roots and kind of what that means to our future. So what lessons can we take to help people in these ways? So sometimes we look at, I don't know if you've seen anything on what's going on with hunger and food insecurity in America right now. Washington Post posted that the majority of folks who have gotten their stimulus checks have spent that on food. So the transactions are showing that. And you on one hand, you might look at that and go, well, duh, of course, right? Basic needs, people are going to take care of that. But at the same time, we see an increase in demand at food banks. We see a reduction in the money and the in-kind donations they're getting. So no one who is experiencing hunger, no one who's saying, I don't know where my meal is coming tonight to feed my family, is thinking about making their loan payment on time. And they're not thinking about that email offer that you were sending out. So that's not to knock any of those efforts, but that's to say there are some when we look at the hierarchy of needs, right? Some things that we absolutely have to be in tune with and responding to. And it absolutely is in our business. It's not just limited to our products and services on the website, but if we're truly here to meet people's needs. The first credit union actually that was formed was out of a crop failure and famine in Germany. So we kind of have this history of helping people through times where food insecurity is an issue. And, so that I dug deep into one of the ideas, but that's kind of where our training goes. It's to look at our business differently and ask this really important question of why, not the what's in the house, but why are we here?
No, that's a perfect, actually, I would love to talk to you all day. But as we wind things down, I think that's a perfect way to do it. I mean, because that speaks directly to the heart of what we started talking about today. It's that is empathy in a nutshell right there, right?
Yeah. It's saying, what we have right now isn't a fit for what people need. Let's dig into that deeper and find out. But the why we're in business, we talk a lot about, and that I'm sure you've looked at all, the Simon Sinek, the golden circle and all that, asking ourselves why we're here and how we can help people is just so important right now.
Well, I gotta put in a plug for you guys, because that's one of the reasons that we love to work with credit union folks so much, because, in our workshops, even in keynote, I like to ask a lot of questions, and I ask people, why are you doing what you do? And I actually advise leaders to that. So when you really want to get to know the people you serve, sit down, have a cup of coffee, have a beer with them, and just ask one question, and then shut up and listen, and just ask, why are you working here? And people have some preconceptions sometimes, and very often are surprised, right? But the credit union folks, always, the community focus is always so impressive, right? And I've met, particularly the last few years, particularly in our Rising Leaders workshops, I've met so many who sometimes they started in credit unions, sometimes they started in larger commercial banks. And I'm like you, it's not to disparage the banking industry, but there is a different, a little bit different feel. There's a little bit different culture most of the time. There are great exceptions in each area, but all the time what these people say is because they'll come for less pay, right? They'll move to smaller towns. They'll move to places that they had never thought of living before. And when I ask why, I said, because we love the community culture in the credit unions, that idea of community service and putting people first. And, well, since that's kind of what we're all about here at Sensei Leader, that's,
and that's, some of the, the content that I've been able to see, and I'm new to the Sensei movement, but it resonates so much with what we're all about. I've heard from, we've got folks who move over from the bank side to credit unions, and realizing that there is a difference in this business model. It's not just, again, what we put on the wall and what we say in our website.
Right,
there's an essence there that's different, and living that, once you see that, is something special. And that's what we try to share with credit unions, to make sure that we're not only recognizing that, but living that out, showing that compassion to the people that we serve.
We can say this, by this point in the program, we probably don't have too many people from commercial banks listening. So we can say that the best banks are probably the ones that adopt more of the culture of the credit union. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah.
There we go.
We do, to be clear, I think we do have the superior business model. So I'm not.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. Well, let's wrap up by telling people how they can get in touch with you. Oh, do we have one more comment? Don't want to miss anybody. Oh, okay. It's well, I should put this one up anyway. Oh. Yes, we do. Thank you, Alex. Yeah. How should people get in touch with you? They want to know more about what you're doing and what your work is, and you can be as personal as you want to, but you don't have to be. We have your website here.
Thank you. Yeah, I just encourage people to check out yourmoneyfurther.com to learn more about credit unions, and to if you're not a member of a credit union, take a look at it, because from the comments that Alex is sharing. Alex, you've been a rock star too, by the way. Jim, you're lucky to have. Yeah, she's been so great. Yeah. Sharing comments, and the people who have, but we're, that sentiment of loving credit unions, that's loving a business, is what is that happening? There's a reason for that. So check out credit unions. The National Credit Union Foundation, we don't deal a lot direct. We don't really much deal at all with direct to consumers, but we're supporting credit unions in the ways we can. We do disaster relief too, and all kinds of things. So, NCUF.coop is, our website, if anyone wants to take a look at it. One thing we've done recently is all these parents who are at home now, schooling kids, talk about having compassion, empathy towards that situation.
For a couple of weeks anyway.
Yeah. But we're putting, we do this program called Biz Kids. It's a TV show that's on public television, but we share it digitally too. And we're encouraging parents to use that to occupy the kids and learn a little bit about money matters and business through those episodes. So Biz Kids, I'd give a shout out there too. And you can find that through our website as well. But for the parents who are looking for things to give their kids other than just, take the phone and go, screen time has gone up, Jim. I hear it.
Yeah, probably. Right. Well, Chad, thank you so much for being with us today. Again, appreciate everything you do. Appreciate everyone in the credit union movement. Thank you all for joining. We had a lot of people coming in and out of the stream today. That was really cool. Thanks for your likes and if you're watching on replay, like I said, continue to add your comments. And if you want to just put an @Chad, and we'll get those comments to Chad, and or comments, ideas, questions. Okay, cool. Anything else you'd like to add, Chad, to finish up?
Just a thank you to you, Jim, for inviting me on today, and for the platform you provide to bring people together, and all the stuff you're doing during this. I've seen you pivot too in the work that you do. So thanks for everything.
Well, they say necessity is the mother of all invention, right?
Amen.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim.